Coming up on iOS today, Rosemary, Orchard, and I are covering what's new in iOS 17.4. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard and Mikah Sargent, episode 691, recorded Tuesday, February 6th, 2024, for Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. What's new in iOS 17.4? Welcome back to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePod OS, iPadOS, visionOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to talk about them here on iOS Today. This is the show where we help you make the most of your Apple devices by helping you with the software that runs on those devices. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I am Rosemary Orchard. Hello, everybody.
Hello, and welcome. We are pretty pumped to be talking about iOS 17.4 because there are some fun new additions coming in this version, or perhaps are available in this version of iOS 17. As you know, we pre-record this show, and so it may be by the time you're listening to this that iOS 17.4 is out, and if it's not, it's going to be just right around the corner. Development is well underway, and developers are testing iOS 17.4. So we thought it'd be a great time to talk about what you can expect, or at least what we expect you can expect. Of course, these things may change over time. And the first thing that's happening, Rosemary, actually pertains to what we're doing now. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so iOS 17.4's podcast app is adding a transcription feature. Now, when I say it's adding a transcription feature, I mean it's adding auto transcription. So that's something listening to the audio and translating that into words as a feature. But on top of that, and this is where it gets really great, they're also adding a way for podcast creators to be able to say, hey, I had somebody actually write up a transcript or proof a transcript of this podcast and actually submit that through as well. And this is really exciting because, you know, sometimes you are listening to something and it just doesn't quite go in, you know, like when you're listening to it. And you can rewind by like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, listen to it again. But it's a little bit confusing sometimes, especially if you're listening to something that's more technical or complicated. So this transcription tool is going to be really useful. It is only going to be for spoken words, not music or anything. But it is really exciting that this is coming. So fingers crossed we will see this soon. And yeah, it'll be kind of like the Sing feature that's built into music, where it scrolls up the screen and it highlights the words as they're being spoken, or that block of text as it's being spoken. So yeah, I'm pretty excited by this as a feature, because it's also good for accessibility, right? And also search. If somebody talked about something in a particular episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm most excited about, are those two things, search and accessibility. I think too, we've been looking into it and what all is involved and, you know, what we need to know. And, you know, you can submit your own transcripts. You can even edit the transcripts. I think it's a pretty cool implementation of this technology. And I love that Apple is using its servers to transcribe podcasts and make sure that, you know, this stuff is available for more people. In early tests, there are some things that, you know, need to be ironed out, as there always will be. And so it's still worth it to do your own transcripts and point to those. But if you don't have that, then it's okay to use the transcripts that Apple provides. Think of it kind of like YouTube transcription, right? We can all turn on the closed captioning on YouTube videos, and sometimes it does some hilarious things that are mistakes. You're going to get that with any kind of automatic transcription. But in any case, this is overall a very good thing.
Yeah, it'll trip up on things like homonyms and so on. So if you're talking about carrots, are you talking about carrots as in carrots in a gemstone, or are you talking about carrots as in the orange vegetable? You know, it's going to struggle with stuff like that. But, you know, it's a good way to get started with all of these things. And this is why, you know, having the ability to proof your transcripts and so on, if you have something where the words are important, then you will be able to check that and listeners will be able to take advantage of it, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, there's another new feature coming, Mikah, so they teased this a little bit because they added it to CarPlay to start with back in iOS 17. And they teased us at WWDC that there's a SharePlay experience now. And so iOS 17 added SharePlay so that you can have somebody's phone connected to the car for CarPlay, and other people can join and add music to the playlist so that you don't have to, be passing your phone around the car or whatever, especially if it's plugged in on a charger or something. And also, having to make sure your device is unlocked so that people can add music to a playlist or, try and talk through Siri to get something to play. But now SharePlay is coming to the HomePod and the Apple TV with the ability to have other people cue what's up next.
House party!
Yeah. Do you remember that feature in iTunes, Mikah? Where there was a house party feature where people could use the iTunes app on their phone or the iTunes remote app to request songs that were being played through iTunes on a Mac at parties. Well, it's basically back with this. It's pretty awesome. To use it on a HomePod, an iPhone user with Apple Music can play a song and tap on the SharePlay icon to generate a QR code, and then other people can scan that to request control over a music playback. And this means that you don't have to share your whole Apple Home with people. And also, because depending on your setup, if you in your Apple Home, you can choose to either share your AirPlay devices, so that would be your Apple TV and your HomePods and so on, with just people who are in your home or people who are on your network. But this way you can have it shared with just people who are in your home, but then let your friends who come over still access the HomePods to play music on them without having to change your security settings. So yeah, this seemingly also works with Bluetooth speakers. I don't have a straight up Bluetooth speaker to test this with at the moment, so I'm going to have to find one to give that a go. But I'm pretty pleased that this is coming because, who doesn't love being able to share the music experience with other people? I mean, some people you want to just have them listen to something, but if you're having fun at home and you've got some friends around, why not share the control of the music or TV through SharePlay?
Love that. I am really looking forward to that because, it is a great opportunity to, if you have folks over and everybody wants to add to the music listening experience, I think this is going to be good. So can't wait to see that for sure. Now, this next one is always going to get people pumped. Anytime that they can get more of this, they get very excited. So what else is coming to 17.4?
Well, Mikah, who doesn't want new emoji, right? Emoji, they're so important. And how has our life not been complete without a phoenix emoji or a head shaking, shaking from side to side, left to right, or nodding up and down, a brown mushroom, a lime, breaking chains. Those are completely new emoji concepts. There's also some new family emoji concepts, which is 2 adults and a child, 2 children and an adult, 1 child, 2 adults, 2 children. There's also a number of other direction-specific options. So people walking can now be facing right, and running and kneeling, and the same person with a cane, people in a manual or a motorized wheelchair. They're expanding what emoji are available. But I don't know, Mikah, what do you get if you cross a phoenix and a lime?
You get...
I actually don't have an answer for that. So if you've got something funny, please go for it.
Yeah, some sort of really tasty fajita. You could have the phoenix sort of blast the fajitas for you, and then the lime. Yeah.
How about roasted citrus?
Yeah, roasted citrus. What I love about this is that a long time ago, the group behind Emoji, which of course is is Unicode, they're responsible with sort of introducing new emoji code points to Unicode. And they quickly realized that as new emoji were being added, there was a problem that creating entirely new code points, entirely new emoji was going to be kind of, it would be sort of overwhelming, and that it wasn't the best way of doing things. And so what they realized is that a lot of times a new emoji can be described using emoji that already exist, and that you can create just one. They created one simple new code point to be added, which is a zero width joiner. And if you take an emoji and a zero width joiner and another emoji, and they're all layered, you can then tell the machine, the computer, the website, whatever, to display a specific emoji, a new one. So a lot of these, like head shaking horizontally or head shaking vertically, aka shaking or nodding, are actually 3 characters: a smiley face emoji, the zero width joiner, and then the double arrow left and right. And when those 3 things are put together, once this next version of 17.4 comes out, then they get smashed together as one thing, which is the head shaking this way or the head shaking that way. The Phoenix is actually a pigeon, and then the zero width joiner, and then the fire emoji. And those get smushed together to make the Phoenix. And I just think it's such a clever way of, and the brown mushroom, I love that one, is the mushroom that we're all used to that has the white spots on it, zero width joiner, and then the brown square. That's the brown mushroom. Can you guess what the lime is? It's a lemon, zero width joiner, and the green square. That's what makes the lime. So anyway, I kind of love the technical details behind how emoji are made and how they're brought into Unicode, and then how they're displayed, and the tricks that they've come up with over time for this. Because I remember researching back in the day the emoji subcommittee that's part of Unicode, and at the time they were trying to figure out this zero width joiner solution they eventually came up with. And so seeing it out in the open now is really neat. All right. That was a little bit of
It also means that if I were to send, for example, Mikah a lime as an emoji, but he hasn't yet installed iOS 17.4, he's not just going to get a weird black box. This is assuming I do it in messages or something. He will actually get a lemon and green, which should mentally translate, I would hope, from Mikah to a lime. Some of these are a little less obvious than others, but as it is, it's supposed to still translate, even if you don't necessarily have those emoji just yet.
Yes, indeed. By the way, you can also call that zero width joiner a zwidge. That is what they call it. That's what Unicode calls it, a zwidge. All right.
Nice.
Moving along from that nerdiness, that maybe that's a clip all on its own. Let's talk about CarPlay, updates to CarPlay.
Yeah. So iOS 17 at WWDC, Apple said, we're going to be doing whole car CarPlay. So that means that, for example, if there's a screen behind your steering wheel, which would display things like the speed and, maybe your fuel efficiency and things like that, Apple's going to be able to take over that as well as, the center console screen that they currently do with CarPlay. And they will be able to fully integrate as well, which will involve things like climate control and things like that in your car. And the first beta of iOS 17.4, which we are currently on beta 2 as we record this episode, so there's still a little way to go with it. But the first one included things like auto settings, which allows you to manage paired iPhones and adjust your vehicle settings, a car camera so that you can see your vehicle's rear view camera feed, charge, which if you have an electric vehicle is relevant, it wouldn't show up otherwise, and this will display battery level, charging status, time remaining until your battery is charged, things like that. There's also climate for climate controls with, temperature, AC, fan speed, if you've got heated seats and steering wheels, controls for things like that. There's also closures which is whether or not your vehicle's doors are open. And this can also display vehicle warning symbols, it seems. Then there's also a media app. Now, you might be wondering why we need a media app. We already have music, Spotify, things like that. Well, the media app is specifically for allowing access to the radio control in your car. So your car likely has a built-in FM, AM radio, maybe even a digital radio, and Sirius satellite radio, things like that. So you would still be able to control all of that from within CarPlay. There's also tire pressure, which tells you the pressure of your tires. And then there should also be trips, which would be for providing driving related data, such as your average speed, your fuel efficiency, your energy efficiency, total time elapsed, and distance traveled on a trip, and more. This is a really big first step to getting full CarPlay control. I am actually very excited, Mikah, because I have a Renault. And Renault were on the WWDC slide for they're going to have this. Now, of course, that does not mean that my specific Renault is going to get it, and it does not give any guarantee as to timelines and so on, but I'm looking forward to it. I do have a screen behind my steering wheel that shows me a bunch of things, and it would be very exciting to have full-on CarPlay, because my dad's car also is a Renault, and it has the exact same setup, except he's got a bigger center console screen. And if I could get my CarPlay set up just like perfectly and everything's great, then I go and plug into his car, and guess what? I'd have the exact same CarPlay experience, and I would have, the same contrast and so on set on the background for the Speedo and things like that. So that would be really great as a thing, and I'm really looking forward to trying all of this out. Obviously, you're going to have to figure out what works best for you as an individual. If you've got CarPlay support, if you don't have CarPlay support, we did a couple of episodes ago tell folks that if you have a Honda, then you can actually take it in to get it upgraded to CarPlay. There was an announcement about that, which I'm sure we can link folks to again. But yeah, CarPlay preparations are well underway.
Beautiful. Now, this next one is also pretty exciting. For those of you who have used things like GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, and Xbox, I can't even remember what theirs is called, but Xbox game streaming.
Cloud streaming.
Thank you. In the past, you would have to basically go to Safari and create kind of a progressive web app on your home screen in order to access these services. Apple has, and I'm describing this one because, Rosemary, I want you to take the larger part about the European Union and all the changes that are happening there. So this is kind of part of that, and Rosemary will go into more detail with everything else that has changed. But essentially, up to this point, that was the only way to do it. Apple did not allow game streaming services on the App Store. And when I say that, it's a very specific type of thing. It is the sort of the virtual method of accessing a gaming kind of platform that exists elsewhere that you then stream back to the device and you interact with it back and forth. And the way that Apple sort of justified the fact that it wasn't going to allow that is that a developer would then need to submit every single game that could possibly be streamed via the game streaming platform in order to adhere to the rules of Apple's App Store. And so instead of setting up that process, they just said, no, you can't do game streaming via the App Store. You just got to do it via Safari. That has changed. So we should be looking to see things like Xbox game streaming and GeForce Now, and hopefully also Amazon Luna, make its way into the App Store as apps that you can then stream from whatever games you happen to be playing. So that global change took place very recently, and so we should, again, that it's going to take a minute for things to kind of iron out.
Yeah. It makes sense that this is now possible, because if you downloaded, say, the Kindle app, you could download any book that you purchased on Kindle and open it in the Kindle app. and not every
Exactly.
single book had to go through app review. So I understand why game content in particular does, have a huge variety of, things that are in there. There could be necessary things like content warnings for people who have epilepsy and things like that, which would need to be accounted for. And I suspect that's what Apple was focusing on rather than the actual game content, whether or not it's actually safe for people. Do they need additional warnings and things like that? But as it is, it should all be coming directly to be installed on the iPad soon. Fingers crossed.
Yes, indeed. All right. Next, messaging with Siri gets some improvements. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm sure some of you are multilingual and have had an experience where you have had an announcement from Siri, and Siri has attempted to read a message in whatever language it's set to on your device, but the message was not in that language. As somebody who has also experienced English Apple Maps directions in France with very interesting pronunciations of street names, this is an experience I would not necessarily recommend, but it's an experience that, fortunately, we aren't necessarily going to have to continue experiencing. Now, obviously, this feature is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody receives messages in multiple languages and wants those to be announced. But as of iOS 17.4, then under Settings and Siri and Search, you can actually go to Messaging with Siri and turn on additional languages to have Siri read messages out in. Now, this for me is very useful. I receive messages in French and German on a regular basis, and sometimes in Spanish and Italian as well. So I have turned it on for all of those languages. So if I get messages in any of those languages, then it will read them out correctly to me. Now, it does need to download these, and there are variations for some of them. So, for example, if you are downloading Spanish, then you can download, Spanish for Spain or Spanish for Mexico, and you can choose different voices for them and things like that. But there are a couple of options there, which is very nice. And there's a nice little Mac Observer article which also explains how you can turn this on so that you can get Siri to announce your messages for you.
Nice. And then I think one of the most important new additions, I recently did an episode of Hands on Mac all about this. There are some improvements / updates that are being made to stolen device protection, which launched in iOS 17.3. What's changing in 17.4?
Yeah, so iOS 17.3 launched with stolen device protection, which basically means that if your phone is taken, then it's not just going to be having to use Face ID, for example, to change your Apple ID password. But iOS 17.4 has added an optional extension to this. So now you can require a security delay when you're away from familiar locations. So that would be things like your home and so on. And this is calculated per device on device, to be clear. It's not something that's stored in iCloud where it goes, oh yeah, so this is, your home address according to your iPad or your iPod Touch from 6 years ago that you forgot is still attached to your Apple account. It's actually learning on device. And so you can say that a delay is always required between changing these pieces of information so that you don't have to worry about, your phone being taken, say, for example, from your home or similar, where, it should be safe, but just in case. So yeah, this is a nice extension for those people who want to turn it on. I have turned it on, not because I don't trust people at home, but because I had a lot of workmen coming in over the last couple of weeks, and I didn't want somebody to accidentally pick up my phone, think it was theirs, and then decide that they were going to try and keep it. As it is, I've still got my phone. There's no problem there, but it's nice to have this option.
All right. Now comes the kind of bigger story. And this is something that is a little involved. So we might even not do too much news this week, because it's important to understand that there are a lot of complex changes. I think, what did Apple mention? 300 or maybe even more than that, new API points and blah, 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 blah. Basically, Apple, in response to the European Union essentially naming the App Store and other aspects of Apple's business as big players in the tech space because they represent a sizable aspect of the business. Then Apple has made some changes to iOS, to Safari, and to the App Store. And Apple does have an entire I would even call it an article at this point, but it's a press release sort of outlining all the aspects of what's changing. But Rosemary, as a non-member of the European Union, but someone who at least once was in the European Union and is in the area of the European Union, tell us about what is changing for end users, frankly. How does it impact the everyday person, right?
Yes. Well, as somebody who is European Union adjacent, these changes won't affect me. They are only for people who are resident of and with Apple IDs in the European Union. And Apple has a way of working that out to see whether or not these upcoming changes will apply to you or not, which is all in the very long document. I'm going to call it a document in their newsroom. But there are some things which are going to be very interesting, which may end up, affecting other people as well. And one of the ones that I would like to start by talking about is actually browsers on iOS. So at the moment, if you go to install, say, Firefox or Chrome on your iPhone, it's not the same Firefox or Chrome that you get on your desktop. Because it is actually under the hood using WebKit, which comes from Safari. And every browser on iOS has to use WebKit. You can download Firefox, you can download Chrome, you can download DuckDuckGo, you can download all sorts of apps, but underneath they're all still using Safari. One of the things that this change is bringing about, and again, this is only for people in the European Union, is that browsers will be able to use different browser engines, meaning that Firefox can use, they've been looking at the Gecko engine, Chrome will be able to use their own engines, and so on and so forth. Now, what is going to be really tricky about this is because it's only for people within the European Union, it is going to be interesting to see which companies actually make the leap and produce a separate version for the European Union using their own engine under the hood, because they're still going to have the WebKit one for the rest of the world. And the European Union is big, but is it big enough for Mozilla and Google to actually make two versions of their app for? Maybe not. We'll have to find out. But this ties into a few other things where, when you open Safari, you're going to see like a pop-up, which is going to ask you what browser you would like to use and so on and so forth, so that you can confirm, yes, you can already change your default browser on iOS, but it's going to be kind of shoved a bit more in front of your face and things like that, which is, an interesting way of approaching it. So we'll have to find out. One of the things, however, that is really clear throughout this article is how much Apple is trying to make the point that they're doing all the things that they've been told that they have to do, but it's not going to make you safer. And they really don't want you to be downloading like a browser that's not using WebKit and using alternative app stores and things like that, because they won't necessarily have been able to vet everything. Now, they are going to have alternative app stores, which have some fees. It looks like I'm seeing from the news today that the fees and so on for using those app stores, which will be paid by the developer, not the users, to be clear, is potentially still under discussion. So I won't talk about the exact things there, but things are still going to have to be certified. So it's not like you're just going to be able to, go onto Google and download some random app that you found from somewhere that's, completely and utterly, random, like some 4-year-old has just thrown bits of code together in Swift Playgrounds and it works, but it also accidentally leaks your data to Elon Musk or something like that. It's still going to have to go through a signing process. So it should still be, checked out and so on. But yes, it is not going to be exactly the same as going through app review, which is definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there, whether or not these alternative app stores actually end up being popular. or maybe not. I don't have that many friends who are Android users, but all of the friends I've got who are Android users basically just use the Google Play Store. People who've got Fire tablets or so on will use the Amazon store for those devices, but that's because they're coming loaded version of Android. I don't really know anybody that's gone out and downloaded a separate app store to install on their Android phone so that they can also install apps from the Amazon App Store or similar. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see what ends up actually happening with these things. But as it is, there's going to be some possibility for developers to integrate closer with hardware on your iPhone and your iPad. Exactly what that's going to look like, we're going to have to kind of wait and see for developers to see what they actually do with this. You know, just because there's the possibility of tying into the payment chip and so on in your device doesn't mean that anybody's actually going to write the code to do it, especially as it's not just a case of they have to write the code and ta-da, it works. They still have to get signed off by Apple and approved access to that. So I guess it's kind of going to be a game of wait and see. And also, you know, we're in the early beta stages right now. The EU may turn around and say, yeah, Apple technically followed the exact letter of what we've written, but that's not what we want. And they might add more legislation or similar to, you know, to change what Apple is doing, or Apple may change their mind on some of these things. We don't know yet. But as it is, it looks like it should be interesting, and fingers crossed, some of this stuff will end up being sort of tested in the EU, and then we'll get things like browsers with alternative engines everywhere. So you can actually have a very different experience with Firefox on your phone to Safari if you want to. And I think having choices is always good for the end user.
That is well put. That at the end there, it is good for the end user to have choice, and so whatever we can do to facilitate that while also maintaining security and privacy, I think is important. I am very interested and a little nervous about the impact all of this has on individual users and support stuff that they might, you know, need to figure out. If I'm worried mostly about folks being more scammed into downloading and installing software that they shouldn't. And yeah, hopefully the protections that Apple has in place will do what's necessary to keep that from happening. But I imagine we'll find some clever folks who, you know, find ways to circumvent that. Which I guess is kind of the point that different executives have made from Apple in response to this. All right. Anything else that you want to say about the EU changes before we move on? I think I'll do a couple of news stories. All right.
I think honestly, it's just going to be a case of we've got to wait and see exactly what happens, because we're still in the very early phases here, and as always, stuff can and will change right up to the last minute and even after release. So yeah, as it is, it's going to be in the EU sometime in March, but we'll find out exactly what happens after that.
All right. So with the Apple Vision Pro headset, it's now out in the world and people have been using it for some time. I wanted to mention kind of an interesting accessory for the Apple Vision Pro that is only available to developers. It's called the Apple Vision Pro Developer Strap. And it is a little device that connects to the Apple Vision Pro and essentially replaces one of the straps on the Apple Vision Pro. So on the left strap, you have the battery connector, and so that stays the same. But on the right strap, you essentially remove the right strap using a special tool, and the Apple Vision Pro Developer Strap gets put in its place, and it has a USB-C connector on it. And this allows a developer to plug into the Apple Vision Pro and properly develop, especially with games and other kind of high graphics stuff. It gives those developers the tools that they need and the performance that they need to properly render those games and or experiences and troubleshoot. It is, again, a tool that's not available to everyone. You have to be a registered developer to even purchase the tool, and it's $199. It comes with a SIM ejector tool that's not for ejecting SIM, but is instead for ejecting the strap. And it's quite a hefty little thing, a sort of cylindrical rod, and it has the little SIM ejector portion on the end. It even has Vision Pro etched on it, and you pop that in to pop out the strap, pop in the new strap that has the USB-C, and go from there. So who knows, in future versions of the Vision Pro, or perhaps even in this version, but later on down the line, maybe that strap is something that the public uses, and you can plug it into a Mac and get even more performance out of it. I thought it was interesting, and kind of understanding how a developer can sort of get wired access to it as opposed to wireless if that's, having issues. I accidentally put my Apple Vision Pro, or put TWiT's Apple Vision Pro into diagnostics mode the other day as I was trying to boot it up. And so I found out about diagnostics mode.
Yeah.
And then
it is important to note, by the way, that this USB-C port for the Vision Pro, it's not like a high-speed USB-C port. It is USB 2.0 speeds. So like compiling a 3 gigabyte app and transferring that to the Vision Pro takes about the same amount of time over cable as it does over, Wi-Fi with the AirDrop and similar technologies that Apple's building in, so that it's connecting directly from device to device. This is intended for getting logs off of the Vision Pro so that you can see what's going on in real time, probably so the folks at Super Fruit Ninja can actually figure out what's going wrong with their app, because the slicing is definitely not quite up to standard just yet.
Indeed. And then if we could play this little video, I thought this was hilarious. Someone has created an emulator of the Game Boy Advance for the Apple Vision Pro. And so they're using their fingers to control this Game Boy Advance that is playing Pokemon. And so they're quite literally tapping with their fingers on the D-pad and holding down B to run instead of walk. And they go into the, what is it called? It's not the nursery, but the Pokemon Center. Thank you. And just like I can remember playing it, they walk up to Nurse Joy. Thank you, Kevin, and start talking to Nurse Joy, and just you're just pressing A over and over again to try and get through, because it's just like, I just want you to heal my Pokemon, Nurse Joy. I don't need to have this conversation every time. But it's delightful, and it made me happy because it also was playing the music and everything. And so it kind of reminded me of that. Not the best way to play Pokemon by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly makes you think about the emulation experience that's possible with the Apple Vision Pro. So maybe you play GameCube games or something else on it.
Yeah, I haven't actually heard, Mikah. Do you know if it's possible to connect like an Xbox controller or similar to an Apple Vision Pro? Because I know you can connect them to the iPad so that you can play games. So
I was actually looking at this
with
page.
The Vision Pro, then you can. Yeah,
that's a good point. I was looking at this that support page the other day. It's the same one that says that Bluetooth mice don't work with the Apple Vision Pro, only trackpads. And it says any MFI controller, which includes PlayStation's latest controller and Xbox's latest controller, can be connected to the Apple Vision Pro. So yeah, you could play Pokemon with that. Yeah, there it is. All controllers with MFI made for iPhone designation work with the Apple Vision Pro, including Xbox, PlayStation, and any controller that works with iPad OS. Nice Google foo. Alrighty, folks, I can hear the music. It's time for Shortcuts Corner. This is Shortcuts Corner, the part of the show where you write in with your shortcuts requests, and Rosemary, our shortcuts expert, provides a response. This Shortcuts Corner request comes in from Ken, who says, "Hi, Mikah and Rosemary. I've been listening to your podcast for about 2 years and really enjoy it." Thank you, Ken. I've had an issue since iOS 15 that I had hoped would be resolved with each upgrade, but has not. Maybe you have a solution? Maybe I'm doing something wrong? I have a couple of automations that trigger, such as when I put in my AirPods, I am asked if I want to listen to a podcast or if I'm going on a run or a bike ride. Then I'm asked which podcast I want, then which episode if I select podcast. The lock screen since iOS iOS 15 almost always shuts off before I can select my episode. It is very annoying. Before iOS 15, this did not happen. Any thoughts? Thanks, Ken. And Ken has attached the pet tax, which is what we jokingly ask for here on iOS Today, which is that if you have a pet and you're asking a question, we'd love it if you included a photo of your pet. So show us Macy the dog. Oh my goodness, so I love Macy. Oh,
so cute. Absolutely adorable.
Look at those little paws. Oh my goodness. I would be such good friends with this dog. I'd like to think anyway. So thank you for including that pet tax. Macy, you're awesome. And you're a good dog. So let's get back to Ken. Basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, Ken has a little thing that runs, puts in AirPods, and then up at the top of the screen gets a kind of notification saying, "Are you wanting to listen to a podcast?" And then has cleverly set this up so that if Ken says yes, then a new screen pops up and it asks, "What episode do you want to listen?" Or what podcast, what show do you want to listen to? And then after that, cleverly pops up, what episode of that show do you want to listen to? And up to iOS 15, those context menus would appear and Ken was able to select the right thing. But as of iOS 15 and on, it gets to the part where it asks what show Ken wants to listen to. But before Ken can get to the part where it asks what episode Ken wants to listen to, the screen goes dark. The lock screen goes dark, and Ken's not able to select it. How can we fix this? Is this fixable?
It is. So the good news is it might actually already magically be fixed for Ken right now. Because one of the things that came about in iOS 17.2 and .3 were improvements specifically to the timeouts that you could get from menus popping up on screen from shortcuts. So what I'm assuming here is that Ken has an automation set up in shortcuts, and I'm going to show folks how you can do that. So in the Shortcuts app, you go to the Automations tab. You can create a new automation, and you can say when your Bluetooth device is connected or when it's disconnected, and you can choose to either run it after confirmation or run it immediately. Now, based on the fact that Ken had this for iOS 15, I think that this is probably going to be one where it was previously you always had to confirm it. And what may have happened, Ken, is you have, especially with iOS 17, gone in and turned on run immediately. And that actually could be a little bit of the problem if you have done that. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But then from there, then you can run your shortcut. And I'm just going to use a simple open app action here to do this. So whenever now my AirPods Pro connect, then it's going to just open an app. But with the menu, specifically with it locking the screen before you've had a chance to respond, I think if it's still happening, I have a solution. And this is going to sound really silly because I'm sure you've tried it, and I'm sure you've tried it a number of times, but you may have given up trying it. Because what the solution is, Ken, believe it or not, is to delete that automation. Okay. And I'm really, really hoping that it was using like the run shortcut action inside of that automation so that you have a shortcut that you can run and then create a new automation with the exact same trigger. Yep. I know this sounds really crazy, but seriously, hear me out. So you choose connecting to your AirPods. Okay. And you can say run immediately. That's fine. But then instead of creating all of that logic inside the shortcut, you actually select the shortcut that you want to run. So I'm going to use this check reminders one, which is from the previous episode of iOS Today, because then that should clear everything out. So I found there have been some people who I've spoken to who've had this issue, and basically they set up these automations a real long time ago. Previously, they always had to tap to run. Then they just went in and toggled, okay, I don't want the confirmation, get rid of it. And the only people that I know that are still having issues are the people that have not actually deleted and then recreated those shortcuts in iOS, those shortcut automations in iOS 17. So I'm really hoping that this is going to help you, because the idea of when you put your headphones in, having it say, do you want to listen to a podcast? that's, that's very simple, but very effective. And I think that is a very nice solution. Of course, another thing that you might want to investigate, folks, if you do have an iPhone 15, is that action button. If you've got the 15 Pro, I should say 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max, then the action button, having that pop up a menu and having that menu be different if there is a Bluetooth device connected, so that you can give yourself the option to listen to music or a podcast only when your headphones are connected. And then otherwise, giving yourself different options. That's something that's a very nice idea. But again, if you're having menu timeouts, try deleting that shortcuts automation and creating it again. And fingers crossed, Ken, your problem should be solved. And thank you for sending in that gorgeous picture of Macy.
Yes, thank you so much. And I am looking forward to hearing back that everything is working smoothly, as you hope it will. Folks, that is going to bring us to the end of this episode of iOS Today. We thank you all for being Club TWiT members and subscribing to Club TWiT. Thank you for your support. It helps us keep doing what we do here to be able to bring these shows to you each and every week. And we've gotten some great feedback. I have also heard that iOS Today is one of the most popular Club TWiT shows. So go us. No, we thank you, all of you wonderful listeners out there, for supporting us and making sure, again, that this gets to keep happening. If you have questions, concerns, comments, etc., Shortcuts Corner requests, send those to iOStoday@twit.tv. iOStoday@twit.tv is the email. And Rosemary Orchard, if folks want to follow you online and check out your great work, where do they go to do so?
Well, the best place to go, Mikah, is rosemaryorchard.com, which has links to books, apps, podcasts, etc. that I'm involved with around the internet, and of course all the social media sites as well. And other than that, you can also find me hanging out in the Club TWiT Discord during the live shows, and in the Club TWiT Discord forum area of iOS Today. Somebody was recently asking a question following up on some of the mesh storage bags that I've talked about storing cables in, so I'm glad I was able to give them a link and solve that question.
Nice.
Where can folks find you?
I can be found at chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. You can also check out on Thursdays Tech News Weekly, the show where I talk to journalists, specifically, in many cases, tech journalists, and I ask them about the stories that they've written for that week. You can also, on Sundays, tune in to watch Ask the Tech Guys, the show I co-host with Leo Laporte, where we take your questions live on air and do our best to answer them. Or, because you're Club TWiT members, you can watch Hands on Mac, my show that covers Apple tips and tricks. All of that is available here on TWiT. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you again soon for another episode of iOS Today. Bye-bye.